Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the session. Bang on 2 o'clock, and we've got 20 people dropped into the session already, which is wonderful. I can see that number climbing. If you're new, welcome. If you've worked with Think Productive, welcome back. We'll just give 30 seconds for the room to fill, and then we will get going. Couple of things that are often how we start all Think Productive workshops, but feel particularly relevant to this afternoon's topic. Let's create a place for good attention. So if you've got your email on at the moment, why don't you shut that down? If you've got your phone next to you at the moment, why don't you put it on Do Not Disturb? Maybe you could do the same thing in Teams or WhatsApp or whatever else is contributing to your digital bombardment. And I'm sure that is going to be one of the things that we're going to be discussing as the session opens. So I'm going to kick off. I am Lee Cottier. I am one of the Think Productive Productivity Ninjas. With me is my colleague Dee, who's going to be helping me co-host the session this afternoon. And particularly if this is the first time you've ever worked with Think Productive, you're most welcome. We're a training and coaching company. We help people with all sorts of things through keynotes, training workshops, coaching, consultancy. But all of our help, whether we're working in the public sector, commercial, charities, SMEs, is kind of held together by two key themes. We're interested in productivity. The clue is in the name of the company. Many of our workshops, indeed our trainers. I have the strangest job title in the world, but I do enjoy it. But we're also interested in helping people with that other thing that we're often struggling with when it comes to getting our stuff done and ticking off all of those tasks, which is the well-being, the work-life balance, the having a life, and particularly our topic for this afternoon when it comes to email and digital overwhelm may be one of those ways that people are looking for help. So here this afternoon, we're going to dive straight in because these are short 45-minute sessions. We're here for this week's free skills booster. This one's called Inbox Mastery for People Professionals. But if you snuck in and you're just a member of the general profession, then you are very, very welcome. Subtitle: Conquer Email Overload. Just to reassure you in terms of how we're working, we're in Zoom webinar this afternoon. So it's only me and Dee that can be seen and speak, unfortunately. But already it's really nice to see people are active in the chat. We're both going to be keeping an eye on the chat throughout. So if you've got something you want to share, you want to ask, just throw that in there. And I believe we've also got the Q&A panel access available as well, Dee. If you want to draw attention to a question there, we're going to reserve some time for questions later on as well. So what's this free session on a Wednesday afternoon? Why are we all here? Well, the idea of the skills boosters is we want to give you something useful in its own right. But also it's an opportunity, if you are here as someone who's involved in organizational development, learning and development, training, to just get a little bit of a taster of what might happen should you bring some of our fuller workshops into your team. So the session today is just some little nuggets from two of our workshops. We've got our world famous and ever popular Getting Your Inbox to Zero. You can imagine what that one does. It's exactly what it says on the tin. And that's a small group workshop for 15 people, takes half a day. And also we have a version of that called the Productivity Ninjas Email Survival Guide, which works with larger groups. It's more interactive keynote format. And that one is 2 hours as well. So you can imagine how fast I'm going to have to gallop to get you some good nuggets this afternoon in just a 45-minute little taster. I'm assuming you think that email might be a problem, but let's just test that before we dive in with some fixes and some help. So I'd love you all to head to the chat, and I'd love you to drop in just a little way of characterizing what your current relationship with your email is like. You might tell us a little bit about how it's affecting your ability to get good stuff done and maybe why. Or you might dive in more on the well-being, work-life balance angle, the idea of like kind of getting that good boundary between on duty and off duty that we're all kind of striving for. So we got there, Emma, very stressful. And I can tell that because I think you've put 6 exclamation marks in there, Emma. If you take a day off, You have 200 to get back to as well. A Begona, I spend more time with it, I think, than I do with my husband. Gosh, I'm feeling for both of you. Maybe we can fix that a little bit there as well. Lindsay says, I'm an inbox zero kind of gal, but I still feel like it rules my life. Okay, so you got some existing skills there, Lindsay. Hopefully we can fine tune those this afternoon. What's catching your eye in people's contributions there, Dee? From what people have been sharing. I can see full and heavy, most are irrelevant. It's the
Yeah, just
devil's work.
yeah. Words like guilt are propping up,
Mm,
overwhelming. So just so many words with negative connotations, which is
yeah,
crazy because emails were designed to help us do our work,
yeah,
not to make us feel this way.
definitely. We've got
Volume.
so much of it. So words like when we do this exercise in the full workshop, we will get words like guilt, overwhelm, doom, terror, but also like heavy. I can see in the chat there. Um, Constant interruption and distraction comes up a lot. Unable to step away, unable to switch off. You know, we would spend a lot more time on that exercise. Guilt when not in email, says Jenny. That's interesting. So you can experience guilt when you're in there and guilt when you're not in there. And Agnesa saying Christmas break is nice because you can get away from them. Yes, there's some small respite coming up. That's a really nice little rapid snapshot of what we would hear on the full workshops. Email, although it's meant to be a wonderful tool, it's getting in the way of our people doing their best work, but it's also creating some really significant emotional and well-being responses as well. So the training that we bring into your teams when it comes to better and fresher ways of dealing with email is meant to respond to kind of both of those angles, which is a hallmark of Think Productive training as a whole. There's been an interesting additional change of context, I feel, over the last few years. This has always been one of the most popular workshops, getting your inbox to zero. People have needed help with email for a very, very long time. But of course, there was that big shift to hybrid and remote working over the last few years. And that seems to have turned the temperature up even higher. So, you know, numbers will vary. People have shared a little bit about their kind of amount of email traffic. Again, we explore that with individual participants. But the amount of time people spend with their head in their email as their kind of mental home place for their brain throughout the day seems to have actually even gone up. And of course, it's not on its own now as well. So Dee is leads on our Microsoft Productivity Ninjas offer, and we get into Teams and chat and all those other sort of pingy dingy friends that are alongside email as well, which are kind of making the thing worse. It's gone up even more, even though we were promised those new tools and those new platforms were going to kind of calm email down and take over some of its job. It just seems to have completely gone up as well. Jenny there says, sometimes I seem to be constantly firefighting emails rather than spending time on other work. Gosh, you've hit on one of the key things that we'll be talking about as we move through the rest of the session. I just want you to join me in this story. I'm just going to try and give you an average picture of what it might feel like to look at your inbox. And if any of this strikes a bell, then put your reaction in the chat. I just want you to imagine that you've been away for the weekend or you've been away on holiday and maybe it's Sunday night and you're thinking, oh, I know they've been emailing me while I've been away. I'll maybe have a little bit of a peek in on a Sunday evening to get a head start. Or maybe you might work part time and you're going, yeah, I don't really work Tuesdays, but maybe I'll have a little look. If you've ever found yourself sucked into the email game when maybe you should be giving yourself a break, then let us know in the chat. And then, of course, you immediately throw email open and all those new latest batch of unread messages are there on top of all the other stuff that you haven't dealt with from yesterday, last week, last month, last year, maybe even depending on how far your inbox goes down. And you maybe flip open a few and you kind of there going, oh, I can't possibly deal with that one. So you like mark it as unread again. And then you suddenly your eye is caught by another one and you go, oh, I still not dealt with that one. That's from the day before yesterday now. I better stick a flag on that in order to make sure I really do get it done today. Have you ever done that? Anybody ever felt that the email is kind of going below the scroll? It's getting a bit far too down the pile. and you think, oh, I know, not only will I mark it as unread and stick a flag on it, I'll forward it to myself and that'll sneakily bring it back up to the top. And then maybe it might have a chance. You know, flags and color coding and context and stuff, they're all good. We love them. But if any of that little story has struck a chord in terms of you or your people feeling overwhelmed by your inbox, then we are going to offer a few little nuggets from the workshop in terms of things that can help. How do we connect it back to some of the wider insights that we share on some of our longer workshops? Some of you who have been on Way of the Productivity Ninja, or you might have been on the full day How to Be a Productivity Ninja. You'll know we talk about the idea of being a knowledge worker, a phrase coined by the organizational psychologist Peter Drucker. Knowledge workers have two roles. They have worker mode. They have the tasks that they're trying to tick off, many of which these days are represented by or transacted in emails. But they're also trying to get out there in boss mode and say, what does the world want from me? What does done and good and finished look like? And what's my next move? And what do I tackle in which order? Email doesn't necessarily help us with that in terms of our current relationship. So we need to reset the sort of the control balance and also the attention balance when it comes to email. Dee, I'm going to come to you again to just catch us up on anything that's coming in the chat, but I'll just share this last slide for now. One of the reasons why email is so insidious and it wants us to look at it all the time is that kind of fear of missing out, that fear of what have I forgotten? What have I overlooked? Who have I let down? And, you know, should we even be able to carve out a little window of attention to actually get some stuff done and get our head down? As soon as that little ping, that little ding goes, it's like, ooh, shiny, who loves me? And then we're drawn back into the box again. It's the kind of, what is the secret of the unopened email that can be particularly insidious and drawing us in all the time? Dee, is there anything you spotted from the chat that just sort of relates to that little section there, or you'd like to bring in?
Lots of people really relate to your story. Lots of serial flaggers,
Mm-hmm.
lots of people saying guilty as charged, forwarding myself emails.
With full forgiveness for everyone.
Yeah,
It's very common.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then someone saying, oh, they just hope by the time they drop off that they're not relevant anymore. So
Someone will have dealt with it by then. Often
yeah,
that's the case, of course, particularly if there's over CCing and too much group circulationing and stuff like that. So in this group today, and we would find in general groups that we work with, there is a real hunger to kind of reset this relationship with email, and indeed, in a wider sense, a lot of the other kind of digital platforms and the messaging that comes with the modern tools we're using. So we pitch this idea of inbox zero. It's in one of the workshop titles. It sounds almost impossible. We kind of want to go in with like a big, bold promise and a big, bold challenge. But the reason why it's one of our favorite workshops is even though it's only kind of one part of the productivity meets well-being kind of space that we work in, it often can be an extremely transformational change for people achieved like in only one session as well. So we're going to give you a few little nuggets. It will be enough for you to have a go under your own steam if you would like. And maybe we'll let you know at the end how you can let us know how you get on. So advice number one, take back control of your attention. There are very, very clever people with multiple PhDs who have designed very carefully all the different ways that all those little alerts and pop-ups and bings and balloons can grab hold of your brain and say, stop what you're doing and come and look at me. Okay. So if it's never occurred to you to either tone down or to turn off any of those notifications, we invite you to play around with that over the coming days and weeks. Some of that is just built in really easy. For instance, in focus mode now within Window, if you just double click your clock area down at the bottom right hand side of your taskbar, you can immediately look at your settings for what we call focus mode dashes. You can start to create some texture in your day where you're kind of available and connected, but also some parts of the day where you can get a little bit away from the bombardment and get some really good stuff done. Many of you I know, and I wish that I could see you today, are literally clenching at the idea of me saying, why don't you turn the notifications off? Because we are just so terrified that we might miss out. And we're also so conditioned that we should be on this always connected, kind of always there, always responsive, second to second kind of mode of operation. We'd like to suggest there is a better way. And Joe in the chat, thank you for joining our cause and saying the best thing I ever did was to turn off notifications. But then you're all going, okay, Lee, I might give it a go, but like, what will I be missing? So change number 2 is to change the way in which we pattern our day, we pattern our week in order to relate with our emails. This idea of checky. I'm just going to go and check my emails before I get on to another task. I'm just going to do this. And like, oh, I was in the middle of that spreadsheet, but now I've seen an alert. I'll just go and check what that one is. We're instead replacing that behavior with what we call processing emails. And you can kind of see from the conveyor belt kind of idea that this is a little bit different. First of all, processing emails happens when we decide rather than when the machine pings. It happens in batches, it happens in bursts. And then there are gaps in between where maybe we can do some other kinds of work, we can go to meetings, we can create, we can decide, we can problem solve, but maybe also we can deal with the emails that we already have rather than being constantly bombarded by the new ones as well. Rebecca, I've seen your question. Dee, if you just want to capture that and then we'll bring it in an appropriate part in the content, or we'll bring it in the Q&A as well. That is a very natural concern. Rebecca says, for the benefit of the recording, how do you deal with decisions being made when you're unavailable? Good one. What is the mindset change number 2? We're going to talk to you practically about what happens in a processing dash in a minute. And Rigel, other great question there as well. How do you do this if you have multiple email inboxes and Gmail as well as Outlook? We also need to reset our kind of expectations around like all emails are equally important and equally deserving of our attention and action. That is not the case. Like every single email arrives in our inbox, it looks visually the same, unless we put some fancy rules and filters on it that maybe can do some color coding or pre-flagging. And they interrupt our attention in exactly the same way. But some emails are far more important than others. I saw a contribution in the chat about there's so much that lands in my inbox that's irrelevant. We need better ways, and moving from checking to processing in dashes is one of the better ways to kind of getting to the good stuff quicker and moving through the irrelevant or the peripheral stuff as well. And then the other note of hope that we do, as well as kind of doing that sort of 80-20 rule version of like, what's the good stuff to what's the noise, is that when we're doing the inbox to zero workshop and somebody says, but Lee, like I'd really change my life. I like to change my life when it comes to email on an ongoing basis, but I've got 4,000 emails in my inbox as a backlog. We give them some hope with the 800-20 rule. So 5 lots of 800 are 4,000. 5 lots of 20 are about 80. We would typically find when we've taken somebody through the inbox clearing process in getting your inbox to zero, that from a backlog of 4,000 emails, which is more common than you might think, there'll probably be people on the session today, you don't need to confess, that have got 4,000 or 5,000 emails or more sitting in their backlog. There's maybe 60, 70, 80 emails that still represent live stories, balls in the air, things where you need to take action on as well. Dee, I've just seen you said love this, Anna. So do you want to say what Anna shared as well?
Yeah, Anna set up a rule in her inbox. So anything where she is CC'd,
Yep.
It goes to a folder that she just calls her CC box,
Yep.
and she just checks that one or two times a day.
Yep. So we get an automatic, like the machine is helping us with the triage. So again, I'm just going to dive in a minute into the reality of what actually happens practically in a processing dash, because I'm being a bit mysterious about that. But I really like the idea, Anna, that you've set up that rule so you could process what you expect would be lower value, lower velocity emails maybe once a day. And then maybe you could process the stuff that makes it through those filters a couple of times a day or something like that. So really like the way that you're customizing the technique already. So how can we do, how can we set it up in Gmail though? Yeah, there's rules and filters that do that as well in Gmail. If you contact us and you'd like some Gmail tips, there'll be loads of ways of reaching out to us at the end of the session. I'm sure we can sort you out with some of the materials for Gmail hacks as well. Oh, so many questions here that we're storing up. Let me just take you through a little bit more stuff, and then I'm going to try and reserve a good full 15 minutes for discussion and Q&A at the end. So what happens in a processing dash? Well, first of all, we invite you over the coming days to move from an always on dribby drab, my brain is being pulled in by an email every 90 seconds, every 2-3 minutes, or whatever it is, to some kind of daily rhythm where you process in dashes. Now, that's going to be different for each of you, depending on how much of your work is transacted in email, what the kind of speed of churn is of actions, maybe even the nature of the correspondence as well. But typical patterns that people might be able to establish after this session would be maybe processing 3 times a day, morning, lunchtime, evening. Maybe you need to go 10 minutes at the top of every hour in order to feel that you're getting that balance between processing the new inbounds and dealing with the stuff you already or maybe if you're in a particularly email centric or high velocity job, maybe you're doing sort of half an hour on, half an hour off, half an hour connected live in the email, and then half an hour maybe in work offline mode or with the notifications off, dealing with the ones that you already have. What happens in a processing dash? Okay, so in the course, we invite people to set up 3 new folders in their email inbox. And those of you who are working with multiple inboxes, please do make these changes in your own personal inbox first. Get used to the technique, feel the joy. And then maybe if you're working on shared inboxes or you're working on secondary inboxes that other people also service, go and have a conversation with other people about it before you start making the changes there. Make sure they're on board for some new way of doing it. The 3 new processing folders are going to create a new workspace somewhere in between the inbox, which is where new emails constantly arrive and then pile up and then maybe stay there permanently, even when you've dealt with them, and then the files and folders that you have for storage. And it's by creating this interim workspace that we start to really make a difference. I want you to imagine that you have been away from email for maybe 50 minutes and you're coming in for your 10 minutes at the top of every hour processing dash. Because you're getting to 0 every time you do that, when you flip open your email or go back online, there's maybe the 12 or 15 new emails that have arrived since the last time you did it. We're going to go into Drucker boss mode thinking, and we're going to process that latest batch. And the idea is everything's going to be eyeballed. You're going to do the boss mode thinking, and everything is going to make it into one of these 3 processing folders, or it's going to go away to delete and file now. And all of that triaging will have happened and you will bounce to 0 within that 10 minutes processing dash. So what would typically people do? They would maybe start by looking for the real low value stuff. Okay, so that's my option there on the left. What can I tell just from looking, maybe not even opening the email, that there's nothing there for me to see. I don't need to deal with it. I can move on. We just want to create the habit of deleting that stuff on site. Or you might go, there's nothing in there for me. I can tell by the subject line or the sender, or I flipped it open and had a quick look and I don't need to take any action there. But it might be useful one day, or I might want to keep it. So we can just file it away. And if the reason you've never filed away that kind of correspondence before is because no suitable storage folder existed, now's the time to create one. Because Tanya, you're quite right. Actually deleting is pretty hardcore. The idea of maybe I just need it out of my inbox to file or to archive, but doing it now and clearing up as we go as well. Neve, you've asked, will you be able to get a copy of this? We're going to record this session for YouTube. We should have said that in the open. So this will be available on YouTube in the next 24, 36 hours. So you'll be able to go back and replay any parts of it as well. And we'll also contact you by email. Oh, what a wonderful irony. But it'd be a nice email that you're pleased to receive and stuff like that. So let's take a first pass through that latest batch and immediately delete and file what we can get rid of on site. That might get rid of half of that latest batch. If you're lucky, it might get rid of even more of that. The rest, we then have three options of where we're going to put it. And these are a place where these email conversations will live for a little while whilst we're waiting for their story to resolve, rather than it just sitting in the inbox. So, like, give me a yep in the chat, or yep, that's me, or any other reaction if you've currently got a lot of emails in your inbox that are just to remind you that someone else out there in the world is doing a thing and you're waiting for them to get back to you. Yeah. Or you delegated something to somebody and you want to check up on them. Or you asked somebody a question and they haven't got back to you. Yeah. There's lots of people reacting to that one. Okay. All those emails that are there as a little breadcrumb trail currently in your inbox to kind of poke you, to follow up, to check up, or to wait, they're going to have their own little place to sit now called the at waiting folder, because that's a ball in someone else's court. We want to be able to track that, follow up as necessary, but it isn't an action with us now, right at the moment. So anything that comes into your inbox in this latest processing dash that needs to sit in the at waiting folder, they can be moved immediately to that. Give us another yep, I've got loads of those. If you have loads of emails that are kind of minutes of meetings that you weren't in, all staff newsletters, circulars that you kind of signed up for, kind of general project updates and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm getting lots and lots of stuff. The kind of the digital reading, okay, it's emails that you've asked to have, but you're likely they're going to be for information only, but information your brain does need to digest. But there's a low likelihood that it's going to contain an action for you. Okay, so it's typically like the example we had before, something where you're either on a mailing list or a circulation list or a CC group. That stuff's going to get triaged into your at read folder. Okay. And then again, you might change the rhythm of how you come to that. Maybe you have an at read dash twice a week where then you then hop back to that folder and work through that stuff and then dispose to it, file and delete. But again, you're collecting email correspondence of that kind into a batch. Maybe we've got rid of some more from that latest batch now by triaging into at waiting and at read. And then the final option, you're winnowing down to the last few, the last 1, 2, or 3 that maybe have come in that hour, is things that probably represent something you need to do. Okay. And again, rather than them just sitting in your inbox, which is where people leave emails that they need to do something about or they need to reply to, they get moved into their own processing folder where emails that require action need to sit. And that's the action folder. If, as you're processing, say you've set yourself a rhythm of typically 10 minutes at the start of every hour, if there's literally something that just somebody says, what time's that meeting tomorrow? And you can finish out that loop with just a one word or one line reply, then yes, of course, do it. But our recommendation, particularly as people are getting used to this technique, which is any action that's going to take more than a minute, just recognize that that's an email that needs action and you move it into the action folder and it's there in order to create the kind of workflow list that you're moving into from this kind of thing. So again, summarizing there what's happening in a inbox zero processing dash, you would typically create your own daily rhythm. It might vary day to day, but the idea is that you are putting the inbox back to just the arrival doormat of new emails that you haven't processed yet, rather than your combination storage, to-do list, brain nagger, reminder kind of pile. And every time you go and process, each time you will fully clear that inbox back to zero.
Lee,
Yep.
we just had one question
Yeah.
that just
Go
feels
for it.
relevant for this point. So the question was, can we create automated rules to put things in these 3 folders? So I
Yeah.
was thinking I do that. So things I need to read, subscriptions to things, bulletins,
Yeah.
I automate, but
Yes.
things I wouldn't automate all emails from one person to go
No.
into a particular box, because I wouldn't know if that was an action or a waiting or that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But
When
anything
you when you
automate
recognize
away.
something that you know every time you want to be moved to your at read folder, definitely stick a rule on it. You can use rules in lots of other ways. Maybe we'll get to that in the Q&A. But yeah, use the machine where it can help to do some of that pre-processing, but sort of too much aggressive automated filtering and moving might mean you kind of overdo it and miss something as well. But the inbox clearing kind of rhythm is kind of something that you get used to very, very quickly. I can see Rajul says, how many folders should we have? The 3 processing folders are the special ones, okay? They are different than storage and filing folders. So you can have as many storage and filing folders as you like, but these ones are kind of an interim workspace for the emails that we then put into them. I'm going to say one last little bit of content on this section, and I think it might be then useful to move into Q&A just so we can kind of move the conversation a little bit more where people want to go. When we lay out this processing dash triage action read and waiting folders idea in the full workshops, there's always people that you see a little bit wriggling and a little bit concerned, and they go, but if I move it out of the inbox, I'm going to forget to do it. Like, the reason that I don't want to move it out of inbox is I want to be able to see it and therefore deal with it. So the other behavioral change that we spend quite a bit of time on in the latter part of both of those workshops is saying, okay, you've got 2 things going on here. You've got the pulling away from the always on, always being pulled in. You've got the idea of in batches, boss mode thinking based processing of the new stuff. But then you've also got the habit change that then makes sure that that work goes through and actually gets resolved as well. So we would talk to people about saying, okay, your waiting folder, you're adding things into your waiting folder, but things need to be overviewed, chased up, sorted. Maybe you would develop a pattern where once a day you go and put your brain inside your waiting folder. You could even sort it by what have you been waiting on the longest. You could sort it by the person you're waiting on. You could search that folder by keywords, and you could say, does all of that look right? Is it okay? Or does something need like a chase up or a follow up or a question or something like that? But you would kind of be in that folder a little bit less often than maybe some of the other folders. And of course, as soon as a waiting is no longer waited on, things must exit that folder again. So that's the other habit that people need to make sure is that things enter these 3 processing folders, but they're only there for a while, and then they move out and they complete their workflow journey and they go away to delete or file as appropriate. Second one, somebody's read folders might be reasonably light. A lot of people might have quite a lot of stuff in that read folder. Sometimes I've seen people when they are clearing their inbox down to 0 and they actually see what they've put in there, that they go, there's the last 15 editions of the same newsletter there, and they're all unread. And I never got to those, and nothing bad happened. Maybe it's time to unsubscribe. Okay. So again, it can kind of give you a really good picture of what amount of traffic of that flavor you're trying to keep up with. Or you might go, I need to schedule 3 read dashes of 20 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's when I go in and I consume that stuff. And when I've read it, it then also exits that folder and it goes away to file and delete. And then again, having in those times in the day where you are then putting your brain inside the pile of queued up ready for rock actions that have been placed in your action folder. So maybe that might be you've got an hour between meetings, you want to immediately to go to give me some stuff that I can do. It might be you've been away traveling, you need to know what you need to sort out. You immediately process dash 120 emails that have been in your inbox while you were away, and then you leap over to your action folder and start cranking the 12 that made it into the action folder. And then the final habit that we really encourage people to embed is getting really, really kind of regular about, well, once the action folder is done, moving that conversation out of there and into file and delete. These 3 are temporary places where things sit to allow you to do the workflow, but then they also exit those and go away to file and delete as well. I just wanted to complete the explanation of that part of the ideas. But Dee, I know there's been lots of questions coming in. So do you want to feed them to me in some kind of sensible order? And then we'll start on doing that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So one question, do you want the Q&A or do you want the question
I don't
just
mind.
about?
You use your discretion, and I'll do it in any order it comes, because as people can
Okay.
see, I'm pretty enthusiastic about changing the world of email. I don't mind any of the questions.
Okay, so the first question I had an idea for. Maybe I can
Hmm.
have a go at
Yeah,
answering.
go
So,
for it.
how do you manage working across time zones? So, I was
Mm,
thinking if I knew that a lot of my emails were going back and forth with people in different time zones, I would do two things. I would put my time zone that I work in my
yeah,
email signature, but I would also at the end of every day, so if I finish work at 5 o'clock, I would turn an automated reply on. So if anyone replied to me between the hours of 5 p.m. and 9 a.m., they would get a reply that says, I'm
yeah.
offline, these are my working hours, just to make it really clear that I'm not just ignoring them, we're just in a different time zone.
Yeah. And again, like really good social signaling. And that applies in other messaging platforms, not just email,
No,
to help people understand like the kind of rhythm and mode you're in. Because I have worked with teams where, it has been a multinational company, and there is kind of that like, they've all been emailing while I've been asleep. Or, suddenly my inbox fires up at 6 p.m. my time and stuff like that. But having a way of kind of setting expectations as a team can be, really start to unpick some of that
yeah.
sort of the pressure of feeling like you're always happening at the wrong part of the clock or something like that.
The next question
Hmm.
is to it's a different mindset shift. So
Mm.
if you're in your inbox less,
Yeah.
how do you deal with decisions being made when you're unavailable?
Oh, that is an interesting one. I mean, inbox less. I mean, we might be talking about as little as like, you've had 45 minutes away from your email to like be on a call or be in a meeting or something like that. Um, I do question somehow, I mean, I've been around for a while, so I do remember workplaces before email was everyone on everyone's desk. And something about the ability to fling pieces of text at each other instantly has kind of spun up the hamster wheel of work a little bit too quick. So I would say, well, let's slow down, give people a chance. And then the corollary of that is if there's something that needs to be decided that quickly, then an email probably is the wrong way to have that communication. You should be calling some people then, or messaging them in some other way. And again, we're not here really talking about the supercharge your team comms workshop, but having those agreements as a team about like, what's time critical, what channels you're used for that versus what, needs to transact within a churn of half a day versus what needs to happen within a churn of a week. Like sorting that out at the protocols kind of level,
Yeah,
as well as thinking about your behaviors. I mean, my last one to say, because I do want to take more questions, is like let people know through things like out of offices or signature blocks, what your typical response time is. And if they need a response faster than the pattern you're trying to establish, then give them an alternative about how to get hold of you.
yeah,
I'm hoping that's helpful.
yeah. Lee, I think you've almost given the answer to the next two
Oh,
questions
good.
because I
Go on
think I
then.
think it's the same. How do you, so I'll tell you the questions and
Mhm.
it was how do you set expectations so that this becomes for other people as well, like a way
Yep.
of working in the organization? And I would cheekily say you book us to come and deliver getting your inbox to
Well,
zero.
you would
Um,
obviously. It's your job to tell us that.
but not it can't not just that. And also how do you handle other messaging like Teams and Slack and WhatsApp? And I
Yeah.
think the answer's the same. It comes down to a really good organizational or team comms manifesto,
Yeah.
and we can help with that. But we've also got one on our website. We have our own I'm just going to get the link
Yeah,
and
how
I'm
we
going to
work.
pop
Yeah, we
it
talk
in.
about how
Yeah.
we use what we do on email, what we do on Slack, what would be a phone call, and those kind of things as well. I think there's one other thing I would say in response to that particular question is that, yes, having that collective group agreement, and it doesn't have to be organizational wide. You might go, there's no way I'm going to get everyone to turn up to that kind of conversation. You can actually take a lot of the heat out of this by maybe having a more informal conversation with just the 5 or 6 people who are your most common digital correspondence, your tight working group in the pings, and say, if just the five of us put a little bit more humanity around this, then we could turn down the rate, we could turn down the tone. And then there's another effect that I notice, which is that when somebody's done some of the training and they start to move away from the always on, responding within 2 seconds, the people at the other end notice the change, and then they might have a conversation with you going like, oh, you took a couple of hours to get back to me yesterday. It was fine, but like, that felt a bit different. And then you can go, oh, I'm trying this, I'm trying to be more conscious about balancing attention and focus. So you can end up sort of starting those incidental conversation in teams with peers about like, these tools are great, and particularly in hybrid and remote working, they're vital, but like somewhere along the line the magic went a little bit wrong. Like maybe we can kind of recalibrate it a little bit like that as well. I think we maybe got time for 3 more minutes of questions, and then we need to wrap up. Yeah,
I've got one more question.
go for it.
I read emails and then forget to action them. So, and then this person works at a university, so I get the sense it's a sign up thing or something they can apply to be part of, and then they feel like they miss their chance.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, again, like if an offer was, I mean, I don't know the full detail of the correspondence, but if something was put out as an offer, like do this, but you have to reply within 30 minutes, then I would wonder about that anyway. But the core of it is that the behavioral change that we share with people on Inbox to Zero and Email Survival Guide, which is creating this interim workspace between inbox and storage that often doesn't exist in people's email, these three processing folders. Creating that habit of processing each batch to delete or file or to win with whichever of the three is important. And then at the other end, then using those workflow buckets to actually then make the progress as well. So things enter those, but also leave them once their time is done. But what it gets away from is, many people's experience of their inbox day to day, which is there's thousands of them there. There's debris of conversations from weeks ago, all mixed in, all that are things that other people are doing that they're shouting into your brain. There's things that you haven't got to yet. There's things that you peeked at but then marked as unread, and there's also in there emails that represent stuff that you should be working on now. Putting some structure and some separation around that really starts to unpick both like better workflow and productivity with an email, but also better well-being, because then you feel like I'm under control. I haven't got to everything yet, but I know where it is. And I also know that I can go home tonight when it's time to go home. And yes, people might be emailing me from another time zone across the evening. And maybe there'll be 35 emails waiting for me the next time I log on in the morning. But I know how to do a processing dash, and I'll find the important stuff, and it will be sequenced into my workflow as well.
Lee, I've had one more question pop
Go
up if
for it.
you've got time.
Yeah.
Any tips for handling multiple mailboxes so they have one Gmail and one Outlook?
Yeah, so this is obviously very common in a lot of roles. You might have your personal email inbox under your own name, and then you maybe either look after a secondary inbox. It's usually around some kind of service process, or you might be part of a team of several people that co-manage that secondary inbox. Again, it's thinking about the rhythms. So maybe on that secondary inbox, you have like a particular day, or you do it for a few hours a day. Making sure if you are doing the three processing folders in that secondary inbox that everyone understands how to do it. Everyone can process, but then people maybe are assigned actions within the action folder by different color coding or something like that. And normally you might be processing your personal inbox a little bit more frequently, and then maybe your secondary inbox a few times a day or something like that. So yeah, thinking about the rhythm of attention that needs to be put on each one, whether you're playing in there solo or whether or not you are indulging in that as a team game as well. Anything else, or should we start wrapping up? These are advertised as 45 minutes. So again, if you're here because you're evaluating Think Productive training, we want to make you believe that we can do sessions and finish on time as well. So that was a little bit, and I hasten to add just a few nuggets from our larger email offer. So that comes in a couple of formats. We've got the half day, 3-hour small group, getting your inbox to zero. We've got the larger group 2-hour email survival guide. We've also got a lot of other workshops that I think are complementary in this space. So we've got things like Supercharge Your Team Comms that has been mentioned. Mastering Microsoft Team Meetings seems to become particularly popular at the moment. And if you want to know any more about what we do in this space as a whole, or what is in the fuller version of this workshop, then please do get in touch with Dee. She's put the possibility in there in the chat. And the other thing is to say, like, some of you are very welcome, very regulars on these sessions as well. So you probably go, I know all about the skills boosters. I go to all of them. But we have recently revamped and relaunched our free webinars offer. So we've kind of collected together now internationally from across Think Productive. So you'll actually probably see things on the calendar a lot more frequently than the typical once or twice a month that we used to just do here in the UK. So please head to the free Skills Booster tab on our website and sign up for more. And please, feel very welcome. What have we got there in the next one? We got one on procrastination coming up. We've got, again, email thoughts. What else is coming up on the session as well? We've got Kickstart 2026 like a ninja. I suspect that's one's going to be popular, D, as well. And the rest of you, if you've got a hold of a copy of the How to Be a Productivity Ninja book, chapter 4 of the book on Ninja Email covers a lot of the stuff that we talk about here as well. Stay in touch. Dee's going to put some links in. Find me on LinkedIn. Let us know how you get on. You can drop an email to hello@thinkproductive.co.uk saying that you radically changed your email life using just a few little bits of wisdom that we shared with you today. And if you'd like to talk about bringing some of these sessions into your organization or your team, then Dee has dropped a calendar link as well where you can book direct. Other than that, it's 14:45. If you're inspired to make change in your email life, we wish you the best of luck. And maybe see you on another Think Productive session soon. Cheers.